Captain Marcus Rivera never expected his final deployment to involve anything beyond standard reconnaissance. After 15 years of military service, he thought he'd seen everything the universe had to throw at him. The remote outpost on Kepler 442b was supposed to be routine, monitor deep space communications, file reports, and count down the days until retirement. That was before the night everything changed. The distress signal came through at 300 hours, weak and fragmented, transmitted on frequencies that shouldn't have existed according to human technology. Marcus was alone in the communications bay, nursing his third cup of synthetic coffee and fighting off sleep when the screens erupted with data. The signal wasn't random. It was structured, intelligent, and desperate. "Command, this is Outpost 7, Marcus radioed to headquarters, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'm picking up an unidentified transmission, requesting permission to investigate." The response crackled through static. "Negative, Captain Rivera. Maintain position and monitor only. Do not engage." But Marcus had always been driven by conscience over protocol. The signal was getting weaker by the minute, and something in its patterns suggested imminent danger. Against direct orders, he began triangulating the source, his fingers dancing across holographic displays as he traced the transmission to a coordinates approximately 20 kilometers northwest of his position. The terrain scanner showed a massive crater, recently formed, still glowing with residual energy signatures that defied classification. Whatever had crashed there was unlike anything in Earth's databases. Marcus grabbed his field gear, powered up the all-terrain rover, and made a decision that would alter the course of two civilizations. The journey across Kepler 442b's harsh landscape took 40 minutes. The planet's twin moons cast an ethereal blue glow across crystalline formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. As Marcus approached the crash site, his rover's sensors went haywire, detecting energy readings that oscillated between familiar and impossible. The craft embedded in the crater was beautiful and terrifying. Its surface seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy, pulsing with colors that human eyes weren't designed to process. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, occasionally flickering as if the ship itself was dying. Marcus parked the rover at a safe distance and approached on foot, his rifle ready but not aimed. His military training screamed warnings about first contact protocols, contamination risks, and the dozen ways this could end his career or his life. But the distress signal was still transmitting, weaker now, and he could hear something else, a sound that transcended language barriers. Someone was in pain. The ship's hull had been breached in multiple places. Through the largest gap, Marcus could see movement inside, bathed in that same shifting, otherworldly light. He activated his helmet's translation protocols and external speakers, knowing they were woefully inadequate for true alien contact. "This is Captain Marcus Rivera of the Earth Defense Corps," he called out, his voice echoing across the crater. "I received your distress signal. Do you require assistance?" The movement inside the ship stopped. For a moment, Marcus wondered if he'd made a fatal mistake. Then a figure appeared at the breach, humanoid but clearly not human. She was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with skin that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Her features were elegant and sharp, with eyes that held depths Marcus couldn't fathom. What struck him most was not her alien beauty, but the unmistakable expression of surprise and hope that crossed her face. "You came," she said, and Marcus's translation software somehow made sense of her words. Her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. "Despite the warnings, despite the danger, you came." "Warnings." Marcus kept his rifle lowered but ready. "What warnings?" She stepped closer to the breach, and Marcus could see she was injured. Dark fluid, presumably blood, seeped from wounds along her arms and torso. But more concerning were the scars that looked older, ritualistic, as if someone had been systematically torturing her. "My name is Lyrale," she said, each word carefully chosen. "I was, a queen of the Sanguinari. My own people have condemned me to death for crimes I did not commit. They pursue me even now, seeking to complete their judgment." Marcus felt his training warring with his instincts. Every protocol demanded he call for backup, establish a perimeter, and wait for orders. But looking at Lyrale, seeing the pain and desperation in her alien features, he recognized something fundamentally familiar, someone in need of help. "How long do we have?" he asked, stepping closer to the ship. "Perhaps an hour before their tracking systems locate me," Lyrale replied. "They will not be interested in negotiations, Captain Rivera. They will destroy me, my ship, and anyone who has aided me. Your assistance, while noble, may have sealed your own fate." Marcus considered this for exactly 3 seconds. "Then we'd better get you out of there and figure out a plan." As he helped Lyrale from the wreckage of her ship, Marcus noticed details that his initial assessment had missed. Her clothing was torn and stained, but beneath the damage, he could see fabric that seemed woven from starlight itself. The symbols on her ship were repeated in jewelry that adorned her wrists and throat, jewelry that looked more like shackles than decoration. "Your people," Marcus said as he supported her weight, surprised by how warm she felt despite her otherworldly appearance. "What did they accuse you of?" Lyrale's expression darkened. "Compassion," she said simply. "In our society, to show mercy to what we consider lesser beings is the greatest sin. I refuse to authorize the feeding ritual on a populated world. 3 million beings lived there, Captain Rivera. They were primitive, yes, but they had families, dreams, art. I could not condemn them to sustain my people's immortality. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Sanguinari were vampires, space-faring vampires who viewed entire worlds as feeding grounds, and Lyrale had been their queen until she grew a conscience. So they exiled you. Worse, they stripped me of my powers, branded me as traitor, and sentenced me to the blood hunt. Every sanguinari in the galaxy is now honor-bound to kill me on sight. There is no sanctuary, no peace, no hope of redemption. Lyrale's voice carried centuries of weariness. I have been running for 3 of your years, Captain Rivera. I am tired. As they reached Marcus's rover, the night sky began to change. Stars that had been steady points of light started to move, forming patterns that spoke of approaching ships. The hunters had found their prey. The sanguinary hunting fleet materialized from hyperspace like nightmares given form. 7 ships, each one a predatory work of art, descended through Kepler 442b's atmosphere with deadly grace. Their hulls were darker than the space between stars, and energy weapons glowed like hungry eyes along their flanks. Marcus helped Lyrale into the rover as the first warning shot streaked across the crater, turning sand into glass. "We need to reach my outpost," he said, gunning the engine as another volley of alien fire carved trenches in the landscape around them. "I've got defensive systems there, maybe buy us some time." "They will not negotiate, Captain," Lyrale said, her voice steady despite the blood seeping through makeshift bandages Marcus had applied. "The blood hunt is sacred to my people. To interfere is to invite death." "Then it's a good thing I'm too stubborn to die easily." The rover's terrain sensors screamed warnings as Marcus pushed the vehicle beyond safe operating parameters. Behind them, the sanguinary ships had landed, disgorging hunting parties that moved across the crystalline landscape with inhuman speed and coordination. These weren't the elegant nobility Marcus had imagined. They were predators, built for killing, their forms somehow wrong in ways that made his mind recoil. There, Lyrale pointed toward a formation of crystal spires ahead. "They will use those for cover. Your people's technology, can it penetrate sanguinary armor?" Marcus's laugh held no humor. "We're about to find out." The outpost's automated defenses activated as they approached, recognizing Marcus's biometrics and raising the energy shields just as the first wave of hunters crested the ridge behind them. Pulse fire from the sanguinary weapons crashed against the barriers in displays of light that turned night into day. Inside the outpost, Marcus immediately began powering up every defensive system available. The facility had been designed to withstand attacks from human pirates and raiders, not alien vampires, but it would have to be enough. "Command, this is Outpost 7, he transmitted on all emergency frequencies. We are under attack by hostile alien forces. I repeat, we are under attack, requesting immediate assistance. The response came through layers of static and interference. Captain Rivera, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Your interference with first contact protocols has created a diplomatic incident. Stand down and allow the aliens to complete their business. Marcus stared at the communication panel in disbelief. Command, there are 7 ships out there with enough firepower to level a city. These aren't diplomats. They're here to execute someone under my protection. Your protection was not authorized, Captain. You have your orders. Marcus reached over and switched off the communications array. Well, that settles that. Lyrale had been studying the outpost's layout through the security monitors. Your superiors would sacrifice you to avoid conflict. Apparently, Marcus pulled up the weapons systems, such as they were. But I didn't become a soldier to follow orders blindly. I became one to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The first serious assault came at dawn. The Sanguinari had spent the night probing the defenses, testing response times and weapon capabilities. Now they attacked in earnest, their ships providing covering fire while ground forces moved in coordinated patterns that spoke of millennia of warfare experience. Marcus found himself fighting beside an alien queen against her own people, using human technology that seemed primitive compared to the energy weapons, reducing his defensive perimeter to molten slag. But there was something else happening, something he didn't understand until Lyrale suddenly stiffened beside him. "They have brought a blood seer," she whispered, her face pale with fear for the first time since Marcus had found her. "Captain, you must listen carefully. What I am about to tell you may be the only thing that saves us both." "I'm listening." The blood hunt is not just about execution. It is about reclaiming power. The Sanguinari stripped me of my abilities, yes, but they could not destroy them completely. The blood magic that flows through our veins can be transferred, shared, even temporarily gifted to another being. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the battle raging outside. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that you accept what I can give you. The strength, the speed, the ability to fight them on equal terms. It will change you, Captain Rivera. You will never be fully human again, but it may be our only chance." Another explosion rocked the outpost, and through the monitors, Marcus could see Sanguinari warriors breaching the outer perimeter. They moved like liquid shadow, their weapons cutting through reinforced barriers as if they were paper. "What's the catch?" Marcus asked, checking his rifle's power cell. "The transformation is permanent. You will live far longer than any human should. You will hunger for things you cannot now imagine, and you will be forever changed by powers that were never meant for your species. And if we survive this, You will be hunted alongside me for the rest of our very long lives. The inner security door buckled under sustained fire. Marcus could hear the sanguinari communicating in their musical language, coordinating their final assault. In minutes, maybe less, they would break through. "Do it," Marcus said without hesitation. Lyralei's eyes widened. "Captain, you do not understand the magnitude of what you are accepting. I understand that you're the only person who tried to save 3 million innocent lives when you had the power to destroy them instead. I understand that you're being hunted for having a conscience. And I understand that sometimes doing the right thing means accepting consequences you can't predict." Marcus met her alien gaze steadily. "Do it." What followed was unlike anything in Marcus's experience. Lyralei placed her hands on his temples, and suddenly he could feel her, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Her memories flooded through him. Centuries of existence, the weight of ruling a predatory species, the slow horror of understanding what her people truly were, and the moment of moral awakening that had cost her everything. But with the memories came power. Marcus felt his muscles strengthen, his reflexes quicken, his senses expand beyond human limitations. The world became sharper, more vivid, more dangerous. And underneath it all, a new hunger stirred, not for blood as he had feared, but for justice, for protection, for the chance to stand between predators and their prey. The transformation completed just as the security door exploded inward, and 3 sanguinari warriors flowed into the room like living darkness. They moved faster than human eyes could track, their weapons already trained on Lyralei. They were not prepared for Marcus to move faster. The first sanguinari warrior died before he understood what had killed him. Marcus moved with speed and precision that defied human capability, his combat knife finding the gap in alien armor with surgical accuracy. The second warrior had time to register surprise before Marcus's enhanced strength crushed his throat with a single blow. The third warrior, more experienced and wary, managed to fire his weapon, but Marcus was no longer where the energy blast was aimed. The shot carved a molten furrow through the wall as Marcus closed the distance, tackling the alien with force that sent them both crashing through reinforced furniture. "Impossible," the warrior hissed in accented English as they struggled. "You are human. You cannot possess the speed." Marcus silenced him permanently, then turned to find Lyralei watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "How do you feel, Captain?" "Different," Marcus admitted, examining his hands. They looked the same, but he could sense power flowing beneath the skin, along with instincts and knowledge that weren't entirely his own. "Stronger, but also," he paused, searching for the right words, "hungry, not for food, but for something else." "Purpose," Lyralei said softly. "That is what you hunger for now. the chance to use your new abilities for something greater than yourself. It is what separates us from the monsters, Captain Rivera, the choice of what to do with power. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement that boomed across the outpost in the musical sanguinary language, followed by a translation in heavily accented English. Traitor Queen Lyrale, you have corrupted a lesser being with our sacred blood. This crime compounds your sins beyond redemption. Surrender now, and we will grant the human a clean death. Continue to resist, and we will make his suffering legendary among our people. Marcus moved to the security monitors and studied the remaining sanguinary forces. 4 ships still surrounded the outpost, with perhaps 30 warriors maintaining the siege. Their weapons were superior, their armor nearly impenetrable, and their experience in warfare spanned centuries. Those odds don't look promising, he observed. No, Lyrale agreed. But we have advantages they do not expect. You are no longer bound by human limitations, but you retain human unpredictability. They will underestimate you, as they underestimate all beings they consider inferior. And you, what advantages do you bring? Lyrale's smile was sharp and dangerous. I was their queen for 700 years, Captain Rivera. I know their tactics, their weaknesses, their fears. And I know the one thing they value more than completing the blood hunt, which is survival. Marcus felt a plan forming in his mind, not entirely his own thoughts, but influenced by the alien knowledge now flowing through his consciousness. It was desperate, probably suicidal, but it had one crucial element that might give them an edge. It was something no sane person would attempt. The outpost has an emergency self-destruct system, he said slowly. Fusion charge powerful enough to level everything within a 10-kilometer radius. Lyrale nodded. They will detect any attempt to arm it. Not if we're already outside when it activates. Captain, their ships maintain a full sensor perimeter. We cannot escape undetected. Marcus's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of sanguinary warriors moving through the outpost's lower levels, systematically clearing rooms as they advanced toward the command center. They had perhaps 10 minutes before the final assault. We don't escape, Marcus said. We attack. What followed was a conversation that lasted 3 minutes, but covered tactics, timing, and the kind of desperate courage that separates heroes from survivors. When they finished planning, both Marcus and Lyrale understood they were about to attempt something that violated every principle of military strategy and common sense. Marcus armed the outpost's self-destruct system with a 15-minute delay, then gathered every weapon and piece of equipment they could carry. Lyrale used her remaining powers to mask their heat signatures and movement, but the effort clearly cost her. Marcus could see her growing weaker with each passing moment. They exited through a maintenance tunnel that emerged 300 meters from the outpost's main structure, coming up in the middle of a crystal formation that provided both cover and concealment. The sanguinary forces were concentrated around the outpost itself, confident that their prey was trapped inside. There, Lyrale pointed to the nearest ship. The command vessel. If we can reach it, access their communication systems. We broadcast evidence of what they really are, Marcus finished. Let my people know what kind of threat is out there. But as they moved toward their target, the situation changed dramatically. The outpost's main doors burst open, and sanguinary warriors poured out, their leader, a figure that radiated authority and ancient malevolence, striding at their head. "Blood-seer Vorthak," Lyrale whispered. "He was my most trusted advisor before my exile. He will not be fooled by conventional tactics." Vorthak raised his voice, speaking in English for Marcus's benefit. "Lyrale, child of my blood, student of my arts, did you think your pathetic attempt at concealment would deceive one who taught you the shadow ways? Come forth and bring your pet human. Let us end this farce with dignity." Marcus felt Lyrale tense beside him, and through their shared connection he sensed her fear, not of death, but of what Vorthak represented. This was the being who had shaped her understanding of power, who had trained her to rule over a species of predators. If anyone could counter her abilities, it would be him. "He's baiting us," Marcus whispered. "Yes, but he is also correct. We cannot hide from him indefinitely, and every moment we delay gives his warriors time to surround us completely." Marcus checked his rifle's power level and the various human weapons he'd salvaged from the outpost's armory. Against sanguinary armor, most would be ineffective, but his enhanced strength might be enough to wield them with deadly precision. "How long until the outpost explodes?" 8 minutes. Then we make our move in 7. Whatever happens, we get to that ship and broadcast everything we know about the sanguinary threat. As if sensing their decision, Vorthak's voice boomed across the crystalline landscape again. "I offer you a choice, human. Surrender the traitor queen to us, and we will grant you a place among our people. You have been touched by our blood magic. You could become one of us, immortal, powerful beyond your species' dreams." Marcus rose from cover, his rifle trained on the blood-seer. "I've got a counteroffer," he called out. "You and your people leave this system immediately, and I won't broadcast the location of your hidden fleets to every military force in the galaxy." Vorthak's laughter was like breaking glass. Bold words from a creature whose lifespan could be measured in heartbeats before today. "You know nothing of what you have become, what you have accepted. The hunger will consume you, human. The power will corrupt you. In time, you will become the very monster you now oppose. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but that's tomorrow's problem. The battle that followed would later be remembered, by those few who survived to remember it, as the moment when humanity announced its presence on the galactic stage. Marcus Rivera, enhanced beyond human limitations but driven by fundamentally human principles, proved that courage could overcome centuries of predatory evolution. The first exchange of fire lit up the crystalline landscape like a miniature star going nova. Sanguinary energy weapons carved molten trenches through the ground, while Marcus's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge and weave between lethal beams that would have vaporized him moments earlier. His return fire, guided by inhuman precision, found gaps in alien armor that no human eye should have been able to detect. But it was Lyrale who turned the tide of the initial skirmish. Despite her weakened condition, she drew upon reserves of power Marcus didn't know she possessed, raising barriers of crystallized energy that deflected the sanguinary assault long enough for them to reach better cover. "The ship," she gasped, blood seeping from her eyes as the effort of maintaining their defenses took its toll. "We must reach the ship before—" Her words were cut off as blood-seer Vorthak himself entered the battle. The ancient sanguinary moved like a living shadow, his form seeming to shift between solid matter and pure darkness. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made the crystal formations around them ring like bells. "Enough games, child. You have led this human to his death through your misguided compassion. I will end his suffering quickly, as a mercy to you both." What followed was Marcus's first true test of his enhanced abilities. Vorthak attacked with speed that made the other sanguinary warriors look sluggish, his claws extending into energy blades that could cut through reinforced armor. But Marcus found himself able to match the blood-seer's movements, his enhanced reflexes and newfound instincts allowing him to anticipate attacks that should have been impossible to counter. They fought across the crystalline battlefield while Lyrale held off the remaining warriors, her powers flickering like a candle in a hurricane. Marcus could feel her growing weaker through their connection, but he could also sense something else, determination that transcended physical limitations. "You fight well for a newborn," Vorthak admitted as his energy blade passed millimeters from Marcus's throat. "But you lack the killer instinct that centuries of survival teach. You still think like prey, not predator." "Good," Marcus replied, using his enhanced strength to drive his combat knife toward the blood-seer's heart. "I'd rather die human than live as a monster." The blow that should have ended Vorthak instead met a barrier of crystallized energy, not from the blood-seer, but from Lyrale. She had somehow managed to extend her defensive abilities to Marcus, while still maintaining her own fight against overwhelming odds. Together, she called out, her voice barely audible over the sounds of battle. "We are stronger together than apart." Understanding flooded through Marcus, not just intellectual comprehension, but deep, instinctive knowledge of how their enhanced abilities could work in harmony. The blood magic that flowed through his veins was connected to hers, creating a feedback loop that amplified both their strengths while compensating for their individual weaknesses. The next phase of the battle defied everything the Sanguinari thought they knew about combat. Marcus and Lyrale moved as one being with two bodies, their enhanced abilities creating effects that neither could have achieved alone. When Marcus struck at an enemy, Lyrale's power guided his blows with surgical precision. When she raised defensive barriers, his strength reinforced them beyond their normal limits. But the most significant change was in Marcus himself. The hunger he had felt since his transformation was evolving, becoming something that had nothing to do with sustenance and everything to do with justice. He could feel the Sanguinari warriors' terror as they realized their prey had become predators, their confusion as centuries of assumed superiority crumbled before human determination enhanced by alien power. "Impossible," Vorthak snarled as Marcus and Lyrale's combined assault broke through his defenses. "You are contaminating our sacred blood with your primitive emotions." "Those primitive emotions are what make us strong," Marcus replied, his enhanced senses detecting the approach of something that made his blood run cold. "And they're about to save both our species from something worse than your blood hunt." Through the enhanced perception that came with his transformation, Marcus had detected what the Sanguinari, focused on their hunt, had missed. Ships were approaching, not human vessels, but something else entirely. Something that registered on his alien-enhanced senses as pure, undiluted malevolence. "Devourers," Lyrale whispered, her face going pale with recognition and ancient terror. "Vorthak, you fool, your hunt has drawn the attention of the Devourers." The blood seer's arrogant confidence evaporated as he extended his own senses and detected what Marcus and Lyrale had already perceived. The approaching ships belonged to a species that made the Sanguinari look benevolent by comparison. Beings that consumed entire worlds not for sustenance, but for the simple pleasure of destruction. "How many?" Vorthak demanded, his hostility toward Marcus and Lyrale momentarily forgotten in the face of a greater threat. 12 ships, Marcus reported, his enhanced hearing picking up the distortion signatures of vessels dropping out of hyperspace. "Maybe 15 minutes before they reach us." "They will sterilize this entire system," Lyrale said quietly. "Every living thing on every world within 10 light years. It is what they do." The irony of the situation was not lost on any of them. 3 species, human, Sanguinari, and whatever Lyrale had originally been before her transformation, faced extinction at the hands of a fourth that viewed the universe as nothing more than a source of entertainment through destruction. "There is a way," Vorthak said slowly, his ancient mind clearly wrestling with concepts that challenged millennia of sanguinary doctrine. "The old alliances, the war pacts that bound our species to mutual defense in the face of existential threats, they have not been invoked in 3,000 years, but the agreements still exist." Marcus felt Lyrale's surprise through their connection, followed quickly by understanding and hope. "You would invoke the blood alliance, with humans, with me." "The alternative is extinction," Vorthak replied grimly. "And despite your crimes against our people, Lyrale, you remain of our blood, as does your chosen champion. The alliance would bind us to joint defense until the threat is eliminated." Through the outpost's communication systems, now patched through sanguinary technology, they could hear the Devourer fleet broadcasting its intentions in a dozen languages. The message was simple and terrifying: total annihilation of all life in this system, followed by the systematic destruction of any civilization that had produced even one individual capable of standing against inevitable death. Marcus looked at Lyrale, then at Vorthak, understanding that the next few minutes would determine not just their own survival, but the future relationship between humanity and the wider galaxy. "What does this blood alliance require?" he asked. The blood alliance ritual that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Ancient sanguinary law required the physical presence of a blood seer, a representative of each allied species, and the willing sacrifice of life force from all participants. What made it unprecedented was that one of the allied species, humanity, had never been part of such an agreement before, and their representative had been transformed by powers he barely understood. Marcus knelt beside Lyrale and across from Vorthak, in the center of a hastily drawn circle of symbols that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Through his enhanced senses, he could feel the approaching Devourer fleet like a weight pressing against his consciousness. 12 ships that radiated malevolence so pure it made his transformed blood burn in his veins. "The words must be spoken in the old tongue," Vorthak explained, his hands weaving patterns in the air that left traces of energy behind. "But the intent must come from your heart, human. The alliance will sense deception and reject any participant who does not truly commit to mutual defense." "I understand," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he understood anything anymore. 3 days ago, he had been a simple soldier counting down to retirement. Now he was about to bind humanity to a galactic defense pact with space vampires, while an alien queen who had sacrificed everything for her conscience bled beside him. The ritual began with Vorthak speaking words that seemed to bypass Marcus's ears and inscribe themselves directly onto his consciousness. The language was older than human civilization, carrying meanings that couldn't be translated, but somehow made perfect sense to the part of him that was no longer entirely human. When Lyrale added her voice to the incantation, Marcus felt the power building around them, not just magical energy, but the weight of oaths that bound species across the galaxy. He could sense other presences watching, evaluating, judging whether this unprecedented alliance would be accepted by forces that governed such agreements. Then it was his turn to speak, and words came from his lips that he had never learned but somehow knew. As he spoke, he felt his consciousness expanding beyond the confines of his individual mind, touching the collective will of humanity itself. Billions of minds, unaware of what was happening light years away, nevertheless contributed their strength to his voice, as he bound his entire species to mutual defense with beings they had never imagined. The moment the ritual completed, everything changed. Marcus felt the alliance settle into his bones like a second skeleton, connecting him not just to Lyrale and the Sanguinari, but to a network of species spanning the galaxy. He could sense their presence, dozens of civilizations bound by similar oaths, all committed to standing together against threats that no single species could face alone. But more immediately, he could feel the enhanced abilities that the alliance granted. His already formidable powers multiplied as the pact channeled strength from allies across known space. Lyrale's injuries began healing at a visible rate as sanguinary regenerative abilities flowed through the alliance bond. Even Vorthak seemed renewed, his ancient form taking on vitality that spoke of reserves no individual being should possess. "They come," Lyrale said, rising smoothly to her feet as the Devourer fleet entered the system proper. Through the merged sensor networks of human and sanguinary technology, they watched 12 ships that defied rational description materialize from hyperspace. Each vessel was a work of art dedicated to destruction, their hulls seeming to absorb light, while weapons systems glowed with colors that hurt to perceive directly. The lead ship broadcast another message, this time directed specifically at their location. "Fascinating. 3 species have bound themselves in alliance against us. It has been centuries since we encountered such optimism. We shall enjoy demonstrating its futility." "Battle positions," Marcus ordered, and was surprised when both Lyrale and Vorthak immediately moved to comply. The alliance had made him more than human, but it had also somehow made him a legitimate commander in this unprecedented force. What followed was a space battle that would be studied by military historians for generations, assuming any historians survived to study it. The Devourer fleet attacked with weapons that unmade matter at the subatomic level, while the combined human sanguinary forces responded with tactics that blended human unpredictability with alien precision. Marcus found himself coordinating a defense that utilized technologies he had never seen before. His consciousness somehow interfaced with sanguinary ship systems, while his enhanced human intuition provided strategic insights that surprised even Vorthak. The alliance flowed through him, granting access to the combined military knowledge of dozens of species, while still allowing him to think and react as fundamentally human. The first Devourer ship died when Marcus used human kamikaze tactics enhanced by sanguinary energy manipulation, turning a damaged human probe into a guided antimatter bomb that penetrated shields designed to stop conventional weapons. The second fell to a maneuver that Lyrale suggested, using gravitational fields to redirect the Devourer's own planet-killing weapons back at their source. But it was the destruction of the third ship that changed everything. As the vessel died, its final transmission wasn't a threat or a curse, but something that sounded almost like respect. Remarkable. You fight not for conquest or survival, but for principles. We had not encountered such motivation in this galaxy. Perhaps there is more here worth preserving than we assumed. The remaining Devourer ships suddenly ceased their attack, holding position at the edge of the system, while their lead vessel approached under a flag of truce that Marcus's alliance-enhanced knowledge recognized as legitimate. "We propose a different arrangement," the Devourer commander announced. "Your species have proven themselves worthy of a place in the greater conflicts that shape the galaxy. Join us, and we will spare not just your worlds, but grant you the opportunity to help decide which civilizations deserve to survive the coming trials." Marcus felt the weight of the decision, not just for himself, but for humanity, the sanguinary, and potentially dozens of other species. Through the alliance bond, he could sense Lyrale's steady support and even Vorthak's grudging respect for his judgment. "Counter-proposal," Marcus replied, his voice carried across space by technologies that bent the laws of physics. "You join us. There's more worth preserving in this galaxy than you seem to realize, and we're going to prove it to you." The silence that followed lasted exactly 37 seconds. Then, to everyone's surprise, the Devourer commander began to laugh, a sound like stars being born and dying simultaneously. "Acceptable, human. We will observe your alliance, evaluate your claims about the worth of preservation over destruction. But know this, we will judge your actions, not your words. Fail to prove your principles through deeds, and we will resume our original mission." As the Devourer fleet withdrew to observer positions, Marcus realized that everything had changed again. The Blood Alliance now included not just humans and sanguinari, but beings whose power could reshape solar systems. The responsibility was staggering, but as he looked at Lyrale, the alien queen who had risked everything for compassion, and even at Vorthak, the ancient predator learning to see beyond his species' assumptions, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since his transformation. A hope. The outpost's self-destruct system chose that moment to finally activate, vaporizing the installation in a flash that could be seen from orbit. As the three of them watched from the safety of a sanguinary ship, Marcus realized that the explosion marked more than the destruction of a building. It marked the end of humanity's isolation in the galaxy. So what happens now? He asked Lyrale as they prepared to depart for destinations unknown. Now we prove that your counter-proposal wasn't just brave words, she replied, her hand finding his as they looked out at stars that no longer seemed distant and cold, but full of possibilities. We show the galaxy that different species can work together, that power can be used for protection rather than predation, and that sometimes the right choice is worth any consequence. Marcus squeezed her hand,